Weekend was my anniversary. We celebrated 33 years. Friday we went and saw Beauty and the Beast. That's probably an appropriate movie for our marriage, but it was fun. And what I recommend with each of you is, once a quarter, just leave the kids and just go take a weekend off. So what we did is went up to Salt Lake and we saw the movie, went up to Salt Lake and stayed at a place there. In the morning we got up and we just like to run. Actually, we did more walking, but it was fun to run through the avenues, and then we went up through Salt Lake Cemetery. And it was interesting as you walk through there to see all the tombstones. Some were huge, some were small. We were just walking by, and we saw the wife. One of them was the wife of B.H. Roberts. It was just interesting, and it caused me to think about, what's the joke about this life? You might as well enjoy life because you're never going to get out of it alive. And that's really true. And as we sat there, we kind of stopped when we saw a bunch of deer. And they were just walking on top of a number of places there. And it caused me to think, the scripture says, let the solemnities of eternity rest on your mind. How much were these people able to take with them? Even the ones with really nice tombstones and things like that, you don't take anything with you. And so as we think about retirement, we should think about the things that matter most. So let's talk about what we're going to do with our financial plan. So our retirement planning section. Your retirement goals. So ideally what you'll do is most of your retirement goals should be in the goals section here. But this one, how long do you think you're going to live? That's an interesting question. And we'll actually do something today. There's a little, how long you'll live quiz. How many years until you retire? At what age do you want to retire? Do you have to retire at 65? How much will you need? How much do you now have? Do you know what percent of people who have actually figured out how much that they're going to need to save at retirement? It's actually under 50%. How much must you save annually to reach your goals? And you'll include retirement planning spreadsheet 6. You'll also include a copy of your Social Security statement, your action plan. What are your strategies? And so we divided retirement into the accumulation stage, which is between now and when you retire. At retirement, you have to make specific decisions. You have to decide how are you going to take that income from your retirement plans. And so we added a retirement stage. And then the last stage is kind of your decumulation. How are you going to use those resources? So ideally, if we're wise, we can, just as we do plans for our families and things like that, we have a plan for retirement. How are we going to accumulate? How are we going to take it? And then what are your preferred investment vehicles? So I think that's an important one. Okay, questions? So this is kind of what we're going to work on today. Retirement, we divided into 3 different areas. Today's kind of the basics. We'll talk about qualified and individual plans, and then the last day we'll talk about Social Security and kind of some final questions. Okay, now the question is, how long are you going to live? So would someone like to come up? There's a little game. It's Northwestern, and I went on how long are you going to live quiz in Google. There's 366 different hits. So I just pick this one here. So anyone interested in doing it? Okay, do you want to come on up here? Thanks, Jalen. So it says I'm going to live to 87. My dad lived to 88. My mom lived to 53. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. So you need Flash Player to play the little.
Where's the link?
You know what? I don't. Pardon me?
Over here? This? Oh.
Oh, you're good. I didn't know that. Oren saves the day. Oren's our hero. Okay, age 23. Okay, you click on next. So it's only 12 questions. Height and weight.
Can we blank this?
No. Sorry. Which describes your family history. Do height and weight have an impact? They do. How about family history? See, I did too. My mom passed away at 53. See, and I'm on high blood pressure medication and under control.
Oh, I'm very stressed.
The stress, but think through it. What are the things that impact how long we live? Stress is important, or has an impact. How many people got up and did the exercise this morning? I wish I could say I did. I did the 7-minute. We have the 7-minute exercise, but that's about as far as I got.
I ate a lot of pasta.
That's the student environment. I get to answer it now instead of what I used to be.
Oh, yeah.
I could answer that one positive too.
I was gonna say. I look so miserable.
I know.
Which one should I answer?
But isn't it interesting? A lot of these things that the prophets have told us, alcohol and tobacco and drugs and things like this. Okay, so let's. What was your age?
89.
89. She's going to live 2 years longer than I am. But it's important for all of us to have an idea. Yeah, last Sunday I stopped and visited my stepmom. She's 92. And she's as spunky as ever. And it's really fun to hang out with her and just, so she teases us back. But thank you. So I'd like everybody to do that quiz. And you don't have to use this one, but I'd like you to get an idea of how long you're going to live. And you may not live to be 89 years, but at least it gives you an idea. Because truthfully, we're all going to end up in a cemetery. We're going to all have those headstones over us. So, quick question. Again, do we have to retire at 65? Let me just share a little video. And some of you may have seen it.
Doesn't have to go to work today, or any day, because he's retired. He's also 37.
On a Sunday night, I don't have to worry about waking up Monday morning for work. I can just stay home and play with my kids.
I usually say he's retired because it's still almost hard for me to grasp that idea because he's so young.
This isn't a story of inheritance, or tech success, or lottery luck. This is the story of a man with a plan.
I graduated college and law school by the age of 23, got a job, did well at the job, maxed out my 401ks, maxed out my IRAs for almost all the years I was working.
He worked for 10 years as an attorney for the city of New York, and 2 more in Florida, never making more than $100,000 a year, spending as little as he could get away with.
I've tracked every single penny I've spent since March 2001 in binders like this.
Hardikoff is frugal and proud of it, showing off the $6 phone, used car, coupon bag.
You can see it's kind of thick.
The house in the pool.
We have that coupon bag.
On the Florida housing market.
A penny saved is a penny earned.
Fortunately, his wife Tracy has learned to live without certain luxuries.
Flowers and jewelry would be 2 things that come to mind. Mark thinks both are a complete waste of money.
And those flowers in the back.
And I bought them for our house.
What Hardikoff didn't spend, he saved over half his income, and he invested aggressively. Because of his investments, his net worth has actually increased since he retired last year.
Probably the most important thing that I've ever done in my life is understanding the power of compound interest at the age of 24 when I first started investing.
Compound interest, as in the money he saved young made interest, and then that interest made interest, a powerful snowball many aspiring retirees discover only too late. For example, start funding your retirement at 24, like Hardikoff, contributing $5,000 a year at a 9% return. You'll have over $2 million by your 65th birthday, but if you start at 34, you're looking at less than half that.
I am not retired.
A lawyer herself, Tracy plans to return to work, but not for the money. They have enough saved up to never work again, which is just fine with Mark.
The biggest regret that most American men have when they're on their deathbeds is that they didn't spend enough time with their families when they were young. And if I don't have to work, I don't want to.
25 years younger than the average age of retirement. Why the rush? Why not? In Orlando, Florida, Alexander Trowbridge, CBS News.
So thoughts? Thoughts on this? What do you think? Yeah, Warren.
I feel like I'd be so bored with my life. Like, I think there's something like about working and like even if you don't need to, just like staying busy and productive and working and.
It's funny that my last child, the first 9 months of her life, I was at home because I retired from quit my job, and was waiting to come back here. And I'm the closest to her of any of the children, any of my 7 children. I just think it's neat. But you're right, you know. But question is, what do you do with that time too? So, how prepared do you think? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think if I could work in a non-stressful environment, such as purchasing a house and just doing a project, a fixer-upper project that I can include my children in on working and giving that, working on land or with livestock, that I don't have to do it because I'm financially secure because of all my investments and I'm retired. But it's something to do that I can teach my kids responsibility and work ethic. I love it.
See, and I loved it growing up because my dad was a general contractor, and he had 5 sons, and he hired us all. And even now, last night, a friend came over and went for a walk, and they were looking at a house, and it was fun to go in through and say, okay, they were asking me some questions. This is, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to find the sewer cleanup. We got to find out this. And it was fun because it kind of related back.
I was going to say, there's a couple on my mission that did this. They retired when they were in their 30s, and they had already served mission presidents twice, and they had gone on 5 or 6 other missions, and they were able to take their kids with them, and so they would just serve while their kids were in school. And that was so cool because they started that whole life to serving the Lord because they didn't have to worry about finances.
And the key is, how do you want to be remembered? Do you think they're worried about how much money they had in their checking account and things like this because of the serving? No, they're concerned about how many people did they help, and what did they do, and what did they do to further the kingdom, and what do you think it does with their kids? I know Jim Engelbrecht lives down the street from me. He was one of those people like that. Quit his job at Goldman Sachs so he can go and be a mission president at like 35. And his kids are wonderful.
So just to kind of piggyback off of his comment, my father-in-law, I married one of the oldest daughters in the family. My father-in-law, he's a nuclear engineer who developed some kind of safety program for airports that has sold really well. And he only works 2-3 days out of the week, something like that. But he loves doing stuff with his kids. So him and his sons now, they flip houses together. He puts up the financial backing, and then his sons go to work every day after school, fixing up the houses, and they make a couple $100,000 every year just between him and his sons that they use for fun. It's just cool that he's spending time with his kids while also making a lot of money doing it and teaching his sons cool principles.
Is that a good strategy?
I think so.
And I think of us and think about what we can do. Again, if we don't plan for it, it won't happen. How do you think how well are we prepared for retirement as a nation? So this is the 2016 Employee Benefit Research Association. The 26th wave of the Retirement Confidence Survey finds that American workers' confidence in their ability to afford a comfortable retirement has maintained its increase after the record lows they experienced in 2009 and 2013. While workers and their spouses who have a retirement plan have much larger savings and are also more likely to have taken steps to prepare for retirement, in the aggregate, only a minority of all workers appear to be taking basic steps needed for retirement. Does it sound like there's a lot of people working on retirement? And the answer is no. The percentage of workers very confident about having enough money for a comfortable retirement at record lows between 2009 and 2013 increased from 13% in 2013 to 22% in 2015 and leveled off at 21%. So 1 in 5 people are confident that they'll have sufficient for retirement. That means 80% of people are not. Worker confidence in the affordability of various aspects of retirement continued its increase. The percentage of workers who are very confident in their ability to pay for basic expenses, this is not the whole retirement, this is just basic expenses, increased. It was 43% in 2016, up from 25% in 2013. Retirees are more likely than workers to describe their level of debt as not a problem. 67% of retirees and 44% of workers, and they indicate they do not have a problem with their level of debt. There's even a whole bunch more, but how does that make you feel? 1 in 5. Kip?
Just had a comment. I think one of the big decisions you make is what career path you go into, and that was one of my big decisions. Is I wanted a career that I could base my career around my family and not my family around my career. I can count on like one hand of my kids, you know, sporting events or whatever they were into that I missed. And so you want to have a plan with your principles, but you also, a lot of people kill themselves in their career so they can retire early and miss out on a lot of their family things. But you know, that's what I love. You teach the correct principles that, you know, build your career around your priorities.
Kid, I also work with a kid in a scouting program, and he's hired a bunch of scouts when they couldn't go to scout camp and things like that. So a number of activities where he's hired people to help as well, and it's given him a lot of opportunities to serve and to help and to bless the lives of others. Let me share an article. This is from Craig Merrill. This is from the Wharton Financial Institution Center Policy Brief. It's called Investing Your Lump Sum at Retirement. He brings out some really important things. He says, this is kind of the summary of the article, and I just wrote it up. It says, retirees must take strategic action in the deployment of their accumulative savings and funds as they begin retirement. 5 forces are converging upon Americans in which some have called the perfect storm, others the tsunami wave, that is about to engulf us from all sides. The best we can do is organize our finances in such a way that we can provide for ourselves, because there isn't anything we can do to stop these converging forces. These 5 forces are: 1, the decreasing levels and importance of Social Security benefits. Relative to the benefits provided your parents, people currently in their working years will receive a much lower return from their Social Security contributions. So Social Security will be less of an impact. 2, the demise of the defined benefit pensions. Defined benefit plans are closing. Over the past 15 years, there's been only 1 new pension program initiated in the U.S. The number of pension plans in the U.S. peaked at 175,000 in 1983 and has since declined to less than 15,000. In effect, the risk of retirement has shifted away from the employer and placed upon the shoulders of the employee. And this article was written in 2007, so in the last 10 years, my guess that 15,000 has dropped substantially as well. Number 3, we hate to admit this, but the aging of the baby boom generation. Beginning in 2006, the first members of the largest generation in American history turned 60, leaving their jobs and entering the retirement force. I'm a baby boomer. The boomers born from 1946 to 1964 will continue the exit of the workforce for at least another 20 years, currently constituting over 27% of the U.S. population and 47% of all households. They will become dependent on Social Security, retirement plans, and any accumulated assets. Number 4, the emergence of post-boomers. Generations X, born between 65 and 79, and Y, born between 80 and 2001, which is all of you, will be burdened not only with the responsibility of providing for their own future retirement and health needs, but also with supporting Social Security and Medicare costs of the boomers. The net effect of this that there will soon be many more people draining funds from the Social Security system with far fewer people contributing to it. In 2000, well, let me just add a thing. In 1928, there was 16 persons for everyone receiving Social Security. In 2006, there were 7.2 persons between the ages of 18 and 65 for each person over 65. Within the next 23 years, this ratio is going to drop to 1.7. And 5, the increasing longevity of the American population. Americans are living longer. Since Social Security began monthly payments in 1940, the number of months we can expect to receive benefits for those who reach 65 has increased by roughly 50% for men and women. Coupled with the fact that when Social Security was instituted, the average person did not live to age 65, increased longevity has placed a tremendous burden upon retirement. So realize today my purpose is to scare you. You realize, and it's not hard. All I got to do is tell you the facts. So his summary is, when considered together with the decreasing yields from bonds and lower returns from stocks in recent years, these forces spell disaster for those who do not take more prudent financial measures to prepare for what is becoming the major financial risk of the 21st century, living too long. Again, my stepmom is 92. And she's as spunky as, her mind is as clear as ever. So I do have a retirement quiz, but we've got a lot of problems that I'd like to go through today. And so I'm going to save that retirement quiz for another time. So when it comes to retirement planning, it's really answering 3 questions. Oren.
With Social Security, that, like, we pay out of our paycheck every.
We'll actually spend a whole day on that.
I was trying to figure out what the government does with that money.
And we'll actually talk to you about how you figure it out and how you figure out your benefit. We'll give you more information on Social Security than you want. But that's okay. That's probably what we do in most of the class. So retirement is really answering 3 questions. How much do you need at retirement to be able to retire as you want? And hopefully that would be to accomplish your personal and family goals. Number 2, what are the major retirement vehicles available, and how do you use them? And number 3, how do you tell if you're on track to reach your retirement goals? And so those are really the three key questions that we all have to answer and we all have to understand. So let's ask the first question. What goes into retirement questions? What goes into retirement planning? What questions do you have to ask? Or should you ask? Thoughts? Yeah, what age do you want to retire, Megan?
People will be dependent upon that income.
How many people are going to be dependent upon that income? So age, dependence.
Lifestyle you want to live?
What lifestyle do you want to live in retirement? Chad?
Seeing if your house is paid off.
Is your house paid off? Is that something that goes into that?
Yeah.
Other things? Yeah.
Helping with like special events for families.
Nathan, right. Yeah, special events, families. We're talking about putting together, we actually have an estate planning lawyer that's going to come here and talk with us. And he and I were talking about setting up a trust and setting up things for our kids. So what do we value for our kids and our grandkids? Missions and educations. And so we're going to try to do that there. Other thoughts?
The tax aspect
Yeah.
of it.
What are the tax aspects? You know, there's some problems. Been hearing all these things. They call it safe money investing. What they're basically telling you is to invest in cash value, index universal life insurance, and all of these things here. But there are tax aspects. You know, with a 401k, it's tax deferred. And it actually changes income from capital gains to ordinary income. But can we use that? Can we target our tax rate in retirement? So things like that. Anyone like, everyone's going to have to do this Learning Tool 6. So you can say that you're not one of the 52% that has not figured out how much you need to do in retirement. Anyone want to come and do this? Do this and then you can print it off. Okay, Oren, you want to come on up, please? Come on down. Which So everyone's going to have to do that. If you've got your computer, if you want to open it up, you can fill it out at the same time, which is kind of a fun thing.
Which one is it?
It's Learning Tool 6. So what I'd like everyone here has to do, and you'll hand this in, is how much are you going to have to save at retirement? So what I'd like you to do is do this assignment. So let's start. Number of years till you retire. How old are you right now, Oren?
24.
24, and what age are you going to retire?
62, 65.
Okay, 60. Let's say 64, just so the math is easy.
So 40.
So 40 years. Remember on your investment plan, what was the average growth of your investments until retirement?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was somewhere. I think it was low. I don't know. I was moderate.
Okay, right. So let's say you could say 7 or 6.5%, something like that. What do you think? What do you think inflation? What did you estimate inflation was going to be in that investment plan? So you can see how each of the things we do in this class build for the next thing. So all of the pieces come together.
It was like 1.5.
Okay, well, why don't you know what inflation over the last 90 years has been? It's been about 3%. You could actually put 2.5 or something like that. But you decide, okay, how many years are you going to be in retirement? Did you take the quiz?
Yeah, it was 85, so 20.
So 85, 20 years?
Growth and retirement.
If you're at 6.5, it's probably like 5.5, something like that.
Estimated taxes.
Okay, 2.5, okay.
Estimated
Tax rate in retirement.
Probably.
Where are you going to live?
Where am I going to live?
Yep.
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Somewhere cheap.
Somewhere cheap.
Probably Texas.
Okay, 20% is fine. Texas has no.
Present level of my income.
Yeah, so, okay. So what present level of your income on an after-tax basis?
Today's dollars? Like how much I want in retirement or how much now?
Yeah, so generally what you do, what do you expect to be making the year you retire after tax in today's dollars? Now, the reason we say after tax is because we're gonna add the taxes back.
That's a hard question.
Okay, it is.
After tax in today's dollars? Well, right now I'm really poor.
So why don't you want to put?
I'll put like, I think 80,000 is probably
Okay.
reasonable.
And what percentage do you want to replace? Generally, research has found
Yeah.
that once you retire, you only need to replace about 80% of your pre-retirement income. Only.
Wow, are you good?
Only 80%.
So I'm planning on having like $75,000 every year.
Okay.
For retirement.
Okay? Now, any anticipated change in living expenses after retirement. My wife, she says one of her goals is she wants to visit every grandkid every year. So we threw an extra $5,000 in just for her. So, but you're still single, so we don't have to worry about that.
Oh, I'm not single.
Oh, that's right.
But my wife wants to travel, so.
Okay, add a couple of $1,000s in for her.
And I'm all.
Okay, so he needs, after tax, he needs 71 at 20%. He's going to have to be making roughly about $90,000 a year. And after inflation, between now and when he retires, that's not $90,000 a year, but because of that inflation, he's going to need $300,000 a year. Okay, come on down.
Social Security, I'm going to say 0.
Okay, 0.
Just to be safe.
And what I did here is I allowed you the opportunity to run anticipated government benefits at a lower rate than inflation. Is that likely going to happen? Probably. So I gave you that option there.
Should I put something in here?
No, and nope, you're good.
Social Security.
Okay, so current value of taxable investments and retirement accounts.
Like how much I have in my name.
Yeah.
Let me think. It's higher than that. Got my tax return.
Okay, current value of retirement assets. Okay, so that 20,000, again, he grows it at 40 years, so it's going to be worth 76. Okay, let's come down to step 5. No home. But ideally, once you retire, you'd like to have your home paid off. In fact, I was reading an article over the weekend, and it talked about, this one gentleman was talking about houses, and he says normally people start with a starter home, and then after that starter home, after a few years, they get a bigger home, to raise the kids, and then at the end, they sell that bigger home and they get a smaller home for retirement. He says, how much smarter would we be if we just bought that one house and just stayed in that house our entire lives? And that was his point. He says, all the realtor fees, all the expenses, all the costs, And I read the article and I realized, let's see, I'm on my 4th home, but we're in 3 different destinations. So, okay. So how much more do you need? So you're going to need 4.4 million. Current savings, 76. How much are you going to need to save monthly to reach his dollar? So he's going to need about $2,000 a month, or $25,000 a year. How much can you put in your 401k each year?
Like 5,000.
Of 401k.
Oh,
18,000, and how much can you put in an IRA? 55. So if he does his 401k and puts one IRA in his wife's name every year, would he be able to reach his goal? Okay. Do you want to save that, or you can probably do that on your own?
Yeah, I can put that down.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the screen. Thank you. So here's what let's just take a let's take a look and see the impact of various assumptions on here. Again, you guys know all my learning tools. Green is what you put in. Things are out to the side. Let's look what happens. What happens instead of 7% or 6.5%, he gets 7. Notice that 25 drops to 22. What if he gets 7.5? He gets down to basically doing his 401k. Let's look at inflation. Inflation's an interesting one. What if inflation instead of 3% goes to 2%? And I'm going to go back to his things. Inflation instead of going from 3% goes to 2%. Is inflation a big deal? Yeah, can it have a significant impact? What happens though if he needs to, instead of 20 years in retirement, he goes 30 years? Do we know how long we're going to live? No. But do we want to plan accordingly? And so my sense would be that we all need to get a sense, get an idea, and plan. So any thoughts? What are the principles for successful retirement? Yes?
So I know there are a couple students or spouses of students in this class who are applying on dental or medical school. So how does that fit into this? Because like my husband and I want to start saving for retirement, but we also know that we have 5, 6, or 7 years of school left.
And I have a daughter, or my daughter's husband. I have a son-in-law who's in medical school. They're getting ready to do their rotations. And so it was fun talking to them last night. So what do you do in cases like that? What are you guys doing right now? So here's what I tell you. In school, you save your 20%, and what do? You pay your tuition, and pay your books, and anything else you need to survive. And so in your case right now, just try. The goal is to minimize those costs. So minimize those costs as much as possible. You save, and then you just continue to invest in yourselves.
Okay, because I know that your investments are going to grow if you invest them early, so we don't want to wait 7 years.
But the challenge is you've got a lot of upfront costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get my emergency fund and try to keep that pretty level, and then I would just try to minimize my costs as much as possible. So I know that because I didn't graduate from college until I was, 87, 32. So, Jackson.
On that same note, so getting that emergency fund if you're heading into dental or medical school, is it worth taking out that lump sum and student loans and having that interest rack up to have that safety of the?
I probably wouldn't do a full 3 to 6 months, but I'd probably have $1,000 or something like that, just in case. Because there's nothing so certain as emergencies. They always happen. Okay. Principles of successful investment. Thoughts? Again, if we can get the principles right, we can make a lot of mistakes at the margins. You get the principles wrong, not much we can get right. The first one's always got to be know yourself, your goals, your budget. What are you trying to accomplish? In my scripture study, I was doing a study on lasting change. What makes lasting change? And what I found is lasting change only comes through the Spirit. But it was interesting reading an article from Psychology Today, and it said that the reason most lasting change doesn't occur is people don't know what they really want. They haven't really thought through what they're trying to accomplish. And until you really do that, you won't have that lasting change. But what are the principles of successful retirement planning?
Know what investment vehicles you'll be using to get there.
Know what investment vehicles you'll be using. Which investment vehicles are we be using? Will we be using? 401k, IRAs, SEP IRAs. We'll talk about a number of these things. Other things. Do you have to figure out how much you need? Yeah. Let me just share some thoughts here. Know yourself. Know the retirement vehicles available and choose them wise. Choose. It's not just choose and use them wisely. And then you've got to choose wisely the financial assets. And again, we need to follow those same principles from investing. Know the retirement planning steps. Develop a good plan. Write it carefully and follow it closely. And start today. Okay. So back here it says we know the retirement planning steps. What are the retirement planning steps? And here's what each of you are going to have to do. Number one, what are your goals? What do you want at retirement? When do you want to retire? Do you have to retire? My wife tells me I may retire from one job, but she thinks I'll continue to work. And she's probably right, because I just like doing things. Estimate your current annual income available at retirement. How much will you have right now? What are your needs after inflation? The inflation adjusted shortfall. We'll work on this. How much you will have accumulated so far on a before tax basis, contribution or reduction from your home, and how much more you'll need to save. Okay. So it's not an easy question. So someone tell me what's a tool that's often used is an annuity. I sat down with Tyler Vongswad on Thursday. We went out to lunch. And we were just talking about retirement planning. He's trying to sell me products. He's just wonderful. And I'm happy to talk, and he's just very bright. And so we were talking about the different things and different products that you could have. One of the advantages of annuities is once you buy it, it will continue. The way you set it up, you can set it for the rest of your life. Or you can set it up for the rest of your life and your spouse's life too. So there are some advantages there. Someone tell me what an annuity is. What's an annuity?
Payments that are equal.
Okay. So it's an equal payments for a specific amount of time, Chad?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. And it just continues.
Okay. Who's it between? Between you and who? Yeah, it's you and an insurance company. So product accepts grow funds, and then upon annuitization, it pays out a stream of investments for a specific length of time. And then the risk here is your money outlives you. Living too young. If you have some annuities as part of that, do you have to worry? And the answer is no. Is Social Security kind of like an annuity? Yeah, you have a guaranteed payment. If you've got a defined benefit plan, is that very similar to an annuity? Yeah, and once you retire, what they'll do is they'll annuitize that in a certain format based on what you say, and you'll have those payments. So they can be structured many different ways. Again, it's an insurance product. Insurance products are high cost, but they're very specific, and they do things that many investment products you couldn't do. So you can do payments for the life of the annuitant or spouse, or for both. Duration of payments, you could do 10 years certain or life, whichever's longer. Type of payments, fixed or variable. And then there's different ways they can be structured. But realize annuities have expenses. And so if you can find some annuities that are very low cost. And then there's different types of annuities. So an immediate annuity You pay them a certain money, so upon retirement, you put a certain chunk of money and they will guarantee a certain amount of money for the rest of your life, or the rest of you and your spouse's life too. And it's really important. The odds are, men, what's the odds you're going to outlive your wife? Like 15%, yeah, 0. So we need to make sure that both spouses. It was fun to see my stepmom. My dad, when my dad was alive, he set up a framework that she would have all that she needs for the rest of her life, that she would have the resources that she needed. And it's really fun to go see her, and she looks wonderful, and my step-siblings are taking wonderful care of her. Then you've got deferred annuities. You start paying it right now, and then once, after a certain time, then the payments comes in fixed. Variable, life, and period certain. So there's a lot of these different products. And when you calculate how much you're going to need at retirement, we kind of assume that what's going to happen is you're going to pick up this annuity. So let's talk about, what are the different stages of retirement? And should we think about it in different stages? Should we just think about retirement as just one event? Or should we think about it kind of a life cycle? It was interesting as I was talking with Tyler. He said, most people think about retirement as a single event. And he says, now what we do is we talk to people that are retiring is there's kind of 3 different buckets in retirement. What are you going to need immediately once you retire? What happens a few years later on? And what happens kind of in your golden years or the lead years? And he kind of talked about putting it in different buckets, and then you have different asset allocations for different buckets. And I hadn't thought of that. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So again, in this class, what we had done, we talk about retirement in the 3 stages. So accumulation, what would be the accumulation stage? Yeah, right now. Once you get out of school, once you start making money instead of just spending money. But this is the time period now and when you retire. You'll need to develop a plan for this stage. If you have debt, and most students do, and when I graduated from school, I did too, how are you going to get rid of that debt? And again, you want to kick out Sally Mae as soon as possible. So give me some ideas of strategies. What strategies have we talked about in this class?
Make a plan.
Yeah, make a plan. How much do I want you to save? 20%. And again, it was really fun when I was in Las Vegas last week, speaking to the BYU alumni and seeing my previous students who had taken our 20% and some had gone significantly beyond that. And to see them at 32 and have their house paid off and things like that, it's pretty impressive. So other strategies, so we talk about saving 20%, maybe taking 15%, saving it for things, 20% of every dollar, 15% into the company 401k. You can put priorities. We talk about, my wife and I are going to be going on a mission in 3 years. How much income do you have coming when you're going on a mission? Yeah, 0. Would that be a good time to transition funds out of deferred retirement accounts and into a Roth IRA? Yeah. Okay. How about retirement / annuitization stage? What period is this, and what happens during this time period? So this is when you finally retire. This is when you and your spouse have to sit down with your benefits plan coordinator of your business and decide how are you going to take that money. How will they be distributed at retirement? Because you can take that money, you can take it as a lump sum, you can take it all at whatever age you retire. You can take it as payouts. But remember our goal. Our goal is to have sufficient assets so we can accomplish our personal and family goals. So here's just some ideas. So how much will you get from Social Security, any defined benefit plans? How much is the minimum amount you would need to live comfortably? So what would you need just to survive on? And that doesn't include visiting the grandkids or things like that. And then what I would do is, as Tyler and I talked, what we did is we figured out how much money from Social Security, defined benefit plans, what do we think we're going to need, and then what would it cost us to get that in an annuity every month or every year. So that would be our annuity to give you that difference. And how about your distribution / disposition / decumulation? That all means money going out. How are you going to spend that? So do we need to have strategy there? And then the question here is, could we manage our tax rates in retirement so that we minimize the taxes that we pay? Some people say, oh, I have to have all my assets tax-free. So basically they're listening to their insurance salesman. But really our tax rate is, it's proportional. So you can take, from our accountants, how much can you take out of a defined benefit plan? Let's say you were 65. How much could you take out of your, not defined benefit, take out of your 401k and pay 0 taxes? How do we calculate that? How many so what's the standard deduction now? 12.6. What else do we add to that? Exemptions. So say for you and your spouse, how much is that? 8,100. So we add 12.6 and 81.
20,700.
So you can take 20,700 out of your retirement accounts and pay 0 taxes. So these people who say, oh, you have to have, it's all has to be tax-free, is kind of silly. And then let's say if you wanted to add, you wanted to pay a minimum of 10% taxes. Do you guys remember that number? Or remember that? I think it's like,
Oh, in the tax bracket?
yeah, tax bracket. So I think you add about another 19,000. So you can take $39,000 out of your of a 401k and only pay it at a 10% tax rate. But the point here is we need to be thinking about those. So here's just some strategies, and we'll talk about these. Framework, will you not outlive your assets? Include minimum distributions. Research has shown that if you'll take 3% of your assets, 3.6% of your assets on a diversified portfolio, generally you won't outlive your assets. Later years, transfer monies tax deferred to tax eliminated assets. You can transfer there. And then the other thing too is then you just manage your tax assets. Manage your tax rates in retirement. Okay, does that make sense? Again, it's forcing us to look at the headstones in the cemeteries. As the scriptures say, let the solemnities of eternity rest on your mind. But it's important. Okay, so let's do a case. This is a tough case. I realize that. So what we're going to do, so now you've got a retirement plan. Here's a couple, both age 35. They hope to retire in 25 years. So they're going to retire at age 60. Right now, they have retirement income of $25,000 each year in today's dollars, roughly $10,000 from Social Security and $15,000 from their savings. But they would actually need $67,500. So how much are they going to have to save annually for 30 years of retirement if they wish to meet their income projection? Now, in order to do this, again, we have to say what's our 2% inflation both before and after retirement, 8% return on investments before retirement, and 7% during retirement. Could we do this problem? So let's talk about how we would do this. So we're going to set it up. I like to have you draw the diagram. When I was a kid growing up, I can't remember, Kip, you could probably help me. What was that song that says, and when you die, and you hear it reverberating it throughout the whole song? You're too young. Okay, so what I like people to do is first thing to do is you draw the diagram. There's a 4-step process in this. And so here's now, here's your return, here's your inflation, here's the time frame, here is retirement, again, accumulation, retirement, decumulation, and here's your return in retirement and inflation in retirement. And here's when you die. Again. Here's kind of the framework. First, calculate the shortfall. The shortfall is between what you have now and what you need. So take what you need, divide what you have now, and that would give you the shortfall. Okay? Does that make sense? The second thing you have to do is you have to inflation adjust the shortfall. Let's see, I need 67.5, I have 25. What's the difference there?
40.
Yeah, 40 and change. But you have to inflation adjust them because that 40 and change is for right now. And if inflation increases for 25 years, how much is it going to be then? What's the law of 72? Rule of 72? You guys remember that? Come on, rule of 72. When you go years, every time years times interest rate equals 72, it doubles the amount you need. So for example, we've got 25 years times 2%, it's 50%. It won't quite double. What I should have done is should have made that 3%, and that would have made the problem easier because it would basically double. It's just an approximation. Okay, so the way you could use this is you could say, okay, I'm earning 7%. How many years would it take me to double my money? So if I'm earning 7%, how many years would I take to double my money? If we go 10 years, that's roughly 72. So it would take me roughly 10 years to double that money. And you can check it on your calculators. And it's a rough approximation, but it's something to use when you're thinking about things. Okay, so if we inflation adjusts that shortfall, and then we calculate the real return. Remember at the first day we talked about mathematics. Remember we talked about real returns. How do you calculate the real return? Is it just this 7% minus 2% here? No, because that overstates the amount. And you don't want to go into retirement assuming you're going to overstate it. Remember, it's 1 plus 0.07 divided by 1 plus 0.02 minus 1. And then the last one is we would calculate the period payment. How much? So we're assuming what we're going to do. When we get at retirement, we're going to purchase this annuity, and that will give us the amount that we need. Okay, so let's start this problem. Okay, can you do it?
I just have a quick
Chet.
question about that annuity. Is that what most people do? Is they'll save up and they'll just purchase that annuity when they retire? Or do they
Many people do. What's the nice thing about an annuity?
It's constant.
It's constant. Will it drop depending on what happens in the marketplace? No. So, in fact, some people have even used annuities as part of the bond portion of their portfolios. Yes.
Also, isn't it a little bit overly optimistic to assume that you're going to get 8% through up until you retire because you're going to be changing your portfolio to help?
Might you want to be a little bit more risk averse?
Yeah, or to break it off and go like a 10-year before that, then you lower it.
And actually, what I did, I wrote this case about 10 years ago, and I just used it everything. My view right now is this returns probably 7%, and probably 5.5 or 6. In fact, you might even go down to 6.5%. Because my view is I think returns going forward are going to be less for the market overall. But again, if you will again index that, you'll invest low cost and tax efficiently. Remember, we're not paying these high fees to these financial advisors who think of you as an ATM for their kids. What we're doing is we're trying to, we follow those principles. We get a good asset allocation and we just leave it. Okay, I'd like you to start that problem. So again, calculate the shortfall. You know what? Let's just do this. So what is the shortfall? So how much are they going to need? 67.5. How much do they have now? 25. So our shortfall is 42.5. Second thing we do is we inflation adjust the shortfall. Okay? So Our present value is 42.5. Our interest rate is 2%. N equals 25. Roughly, what do you think it's going to be? It's not going to double. Yeah, about 69 each year. Just round to the closest dollar. Okay, now the third thing we do is we calculate the real return in annuity. So how much are we going to need each year in retirement? $70,000. What is our real return? So 1.07 divided by 1.02, instead of 5%, it's 4.9. So really, you're 4%. In this little assumption here, you would be overstating your return by 4% over 20 years. And then what we do is we want to calculate an annuity. We need $70,000 for 30 years. So your payment equals $70,000, N equals 30, I equals 4.9. You solve for your PV. So they're going to need $1.1 million. And then how do we figure out how much we're going to have to save each year? So we set our future value to be 1.3, 25 years till retirement. They think they can make 8%, and they're going to need roughly $16,000 a year. So if these guys will fill their 401k, they will kind of do it. Could you do a problem like this on your retirement? Or on a quiz? Okay. Okay, let's do another one. You know, one of the questions is, how do you tell if you're on track? How do I tell if I'm on track to meet my retirement goals? I had my wife take this class. So her comment was, well, I used to think I wasn't sure if we were on track. After taking this class, she says, I think we're okay. But you know what? There's confidence that comes once you've done this type of work. So what I want you to do is I want you to read this article. This came out of the Wall Street Journal. And it says how soaring housing costs are jeopardizing retirement savings. And what it is, it's an effort to help people to see if they're on track for retirement. So I'm going to let you read that. 05, March 23rd of 05. Is this linked on Learning Suite? It's this, okay. Can I move to the next page? Are there different ways of coming at the question? How much is enough? Are you on track? And the answer is yes. But is this a good way of looking at it? Can we move on? Okay. Kevin and Whitney, 45 years old, 6 kids and making 82 a year. 20 years into their retirement plan. 115 in savings, remaining balance on their home, his credit card is $150,000. They've saved 5% a year and earned 7% on their savings and felt that was sufficient. Are they on track? What are their income to debt ratios? How are they doing and what more should they be doing? So what are they? First of all, do you think they're on track? They've got $115,000 saved. No. Here's an interesting statistic. This is from the Deseret News of a year or so ago. A recent survey showed that more than a third of all Americans have failed to save a single dollar to live on after they finish working. Among 65-year-olds, 14% have no savings, and more than half of all people who are near or past retirement age had insufficient savings. Am I scaring you? If it did, I'm accomplishing what I tried to set out today. So let's kind of go through this, since everyone's really quiet. Can't tell until you calculate the ratios. So what is their savings to income ratio? 1.4. Where should they be? They're 1.4. They should be at 3. Okay. How about their debt to income ratio? 1.8. Where should they be? At 1. Could we do that previous problem? Could we do that every year? You could. Is this kind of an easier way of getting to roughly that same calculation? So way behind on their savings. And so the question is, what do they need to do? So here's just some ideas. Too little savings. They're only at 5% now. They need to kick that up to 20. They might even need to kick that up to 25%. They need to cut back. What should they be doing? Too much debt. They may need to sell some assets. They may need to downside. They haven't been doing enough. So here's another question. Would it be nice to have another tool that you could use that's a little bit more how about if we use who put the numbers in? Was that Oren's? You had 82, let's see, age beginning at employment, Oren. Can I pick on you because you did the other one? Yeah. So we said 24. Yeah, 25 is good. Okay, and then starting income? 52. And average increase in your, what do you think your increase in income will be? Okay. Age at retirement, you said 65. And your years, did we say 30 years in retirement? I think we had 20. 20, okay. And percent of your salary saved. Let's go put this 5% first. Return on investment, 7%. Assumed inflation rate, 2%. So what I tried to do with this learning tool, and it's still pretty rough, so I wouldn't put any faith on this, but except for a learning tool. It's okay. Age when you purchase your first home? So at a $300,000 home, it's going to be too much debt for your salary. So you may have to go $250,000. Okay, taxes, insurance, I assume $3,000. Mortgage interest rate, let's say 4.5% because rates are going up. Third, years till you pay it off. So we'll say pay it off at 30. And so saving 5%, here's the recommended. Notice that at retirement, even with those numbers, he'll only have 4.6% times the savings. Now some people want to pay off their house first. And what's the impact there? Let's say, okay, let's say Oren decides he wants to pay his house off in 15 years. Not enough to savings to prepay, so he would have to do 20 years. Actually 25. He could do is, notice that he'll have his house paid off, but at the end of that he'll only have 3.54 saved. Again, if we put that 30 years here, he would have 4.59 saved, and it'd still have his house paid off. What happens here? Why, if you pay your house off early, will you have less at retirement? Right, so you're making more money. The assumption is you'll make more money in your investments than you would on the house. Go ahead,
I
Aaron.
was going to ask, so I assume every year, depending on like where you work, you're going to get some type of raise.
Right, so that's what we figured, that 3.5% annual increase in your raise.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah, that 3.5%. So let's kind of take a look at this. Let's say, okay, now let's say instead of 5%, let's go to 10%. If he saves 10%. Now notice that he's up to 9.18. What happens is if he does 15%? 13.77. What was the kind of the number? 12. So what did we kind of recommend that you guys do? Roughly 15% for retirement, and then the other 5% for kids' missions and education, and your missions and education and things like this. But do you guys get a sense of where I came up with that 20%? And can you change assumptions here? Now, look what happens if he pays his house off in 15 years. He still gets his house paid off, but he's not quite up to that 10%. And then also, what happens if he saves 20%? So what did I tell you before? My goal in this class is when you retire, I want you to be making more money. So here's kind of a doing. If you did his annuity payment, this is how much you'd have. You'd get $268,000 a year, 5% payout at $189. So savings to income, 130%, 92, 150 to 128. So the point here is, again, these are tools. Tools to help you. My purpose here is, again, today our goal was to scare you. To scare you into thinking, because we all will end up 6 feet underground in those cemeteries. But the question is, how do we want to be remembered, and what influence do we want to have on people's lives? Because there's nothing we can do to not to do that. Okay. Takeaways. Takeaways from today. Chad.
I think one of the biggest ones from the video we watched, where you just need to start early. I always think that it's something that I'll do later, but I really need to start now and make sure I start getting that compound interest.
Start now.
Monitor along the way to make sure you're on track.
Yeah, monitor. Figure out where you're on track. And we've given you a couple of tools. Are they great tools? Probably not, but are they usable tools?
I like how
Hunter, Byron.
those 10 years of working, they were living in a unique lifestyle, so that after that they can still live in a unique lifestyle and spend time with his kids, raising them, helping them, teaching them.
My wife always says, live like most people won't, and then you'll live like most people can't. And I always say, you live like a student for the first 10 years after college, and you'll live like a professional afterwards. Live like a professional for the first 10 years after college, and you'll live like a student afterwards. Other takeaways? Wow, what are your takeaways for today?
I think one thing that hit me while we were all talking in class is that there really is no better time than the present to start this stuff. Like, I think, in maybe 5 years or something when I'm making really good money in a job, but now, if I don't start now practicing this, I'm not going to do it.
Taylor, I haven't picked on you in a while. What were your takeaways from today?
I guess the biggest one is just by going through this and thinking about it, it makes me think more about my expenses and the budget that I have. And so just in thinking about it, suddenly I don't want to spend as much money because I'd rather have it later.
I haven't picked on it in a while. Sam, what's your takeaway for today?
I like that there's different stages. I've never heard that either in retirement. And just those 3 buckets that I think when we hear retirement, we think about it like you said, that one and done thing. And
hit 65 or 62 or whatever the age is. But in reality, that's a whole nother 20 years of our life that we need to plan for it.
You know, it's really weird sitting here. I'm 62 and it says I'm going to live to 87, to 72. You know, so I'm definitely on the downhill side. Shelby, we're going to let you be the last one. What are your takeaways from today?
I just appreciated the learning tools and how those can help us plan very specifically for
And realize they're just tools, and there's probably mistakes there too, but they're trying to help. Let me share my thoughts. My takeaways, number one, if you don't plan for retirement for yourself, no one else will. And don't expect the government to do a good job for you. Remember, they buy $750 hammers. Number two, there are various stages of retirement and different things to do. What we need to do is we need to understand the process and the retirement process and what you need to do to prepare. And number three, as Ann and I walked through that cemetery and I saw all the headstones, the one thing that everyone had in common is they had all passed away. And that's the same thing we need to, the scriptures say, let the solemnities of eternity rest on your mind. And if we think about the things that are really important, we will empathize those things in our lives. Thanks, everyone. Budget's due today. If you just want to hand those in, and we'll put them right down here.